Hi, welcome to the Leadership with Sonia podcast. Everything leadership, life and learning, plus outstanding interviews with great leaders and humans across the globe. Let's get listening and learning.
Hello everyone, it's Leadership with Sonia and welcome to our podcast and live where we talk with exceptional leaders around the globe. And it is such an honor to talk with the absolutely fabulous Tanya Walford. She is the founder of Your Plan Manager and has lots of different hats, and you'll see it in the bio when you check out the wonderful things that she does and all the amazing things that she is doing in the NDIS space. She is also a finalist in our 2024 Outstanding Leadership Awards. So, which is, so amazing because she is fantastic. So welcome to Leadership with Sonia today, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for having me. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you about something I'm passionate about, which is being a courageous leader and also trying to be a courageous person in my life overall.
Yes, you definitely are all about courage. And when you think about courageous leadership, like courage, I mean, what does that mean to you? I mean, and tell us about, if you think about your life and your career and your journey, what's been probably something that really stands out that kind of, for you, that stood out in terms of courage?
Yeah, I think for me, probably when I look at the things that have shaped me as an adult and as a leader, the biggest thing would be having three children with disability. The first child, when he was, so we've got four children. Our first child, when he was born with a disability, was around 7 months old, and he started having really extreme meltdowns, which in front of all of our family and friends, we come from big families, for us was clearly different to the experience of other family and friends who were raising children at the same time. And that put us on a journey where then our third and fourth child also ended up being diagnosed with disability. And the first child was a period of 7 years where we were bounced around from parenting programs. We were told we needed to consider turning off the television. We were told we needed to implement consequences. There was all sorts of things that we were told. We had multiple diagnoses over a long period. And when combined with challenging behaviours, and I think this is something that we kind of don't talk about openly when we're talking about families, but often there can be difficult behaviours and sometimes violence and abuse from children to family members because they're unable to express themselves and they're really struggling with how to do that. But that has a very deep impact on how you live and work day to day. And so we went through a diagnosis process where three children were pretty much diagnosed within a couple of years of each other. What that meant for me, who's an ambitious, educated person who really wanted to work, I've always had a great love for working, and particularly working in the space of developing business and supporting businesses to grow and succeed. I had to suddenly reframe everything that I had expected about my life and make it about being a carer primarily. So my primary role in life now is a carer to three people with disabilities, and negotiating and dealing with the transitions and interactions that we've had through the years with education, multiple schools, for example, justice, police, social workers, NDIS, funding from all different areas, sometimes no funding. And I think what that developed in me is a recognition around what it's like to actually be brave and talk about challenging conversations. So what's going on at home, and how I could come to work and it would be 8 o'clock and people would say, "Oh, I've had a hard day. The cat's done such and such," and I would have been through 3 or 4 hours perhaps of really difficult circumstances just to get out the door and get into work. What happened through that process was I lost a multiple number of jobs because I wasn't able to be available as I was needed to, as I was moving more into senior processes. And that really shaped my understanding of kindness, and also how to work more flexibly with other people in the business. I think it also shaped my view around inclusiveness in a different way. So by being open about my experiences, which people often don't talk about because there's still an element of shame to say, I have these things going on for me at home, or, we live in a difficult environment. I think that opens conversations then and makes it a safe place for other people to come to work and share their experiences. And sometimes it is just the cat. Other times it can be something quite significant and severe. But I think for me, that's what's really shaped me as a leader. And one of the reasons I started my own business was recognizing that we've come a long way in flexibility and inclusiveness, but we're not there yet. And I still am primarily a carer, and I need to be able to drop everything and provide support to my children when they need it. It gets easier as school kind of fades away. We're starting to move into an adult situation, but I'm sad to say that you still need a level of flexibility as the main carer. I'm lucky that my husband stepped more into that role in the last couple of years, which is allowing me to explore more fully what it's like to own and run a business that's successful.
Wow, yes. There's so much courage there. And I know your journey and your story, and that's why I just have so much admiration for you. How are your children today? How are your 3 children today?
Yeah, we have 4 children. So our
Sorry.
eldest is also, well, that's fine. Our eldest is also a carer, and we talk about that openly within our family. We as a family are good. We're connected and going through now the stage of young person into adult. So that's a whole other transition process, particularly for people who have autism as part of their diagnosis. Transition is very difficult. We are doing our very best, of course. And one of the things we've recognised is the importance of having a team around us that we trust, who support our family and us. And I think the other thing that we're trying to do is also recognise now that as the children are moving into adulthood, that the choices that they make and the things that they might choose that work for them, that's okay, so it's about letting go a little bit and starting to let them develop their own support teams and work out what works best for them. The other thing I will say is support in terms of formal support. So whether that's counselling, psychology, coaching, just having a person that you can have a cup of coffee with is also part of the strategy that we use as a family to help us get through what can still be very difficult days sometimes.
And you starting your plan manager, this was kind of part of that journey, wasn't it? Because of your own, your lived experience. And, we were talking offline before around that and your journey and where you are at today. How do you do it? Like, I look at you and you go, you've got 4 kids and you're growing this incredible business in the NDIS sector. You also have other hats, like you're a chair and carer, mum, all these different things. How do you, like, for your own, how do you like self-compassion, and how do you stay like, and I'm sure that like I like there's days I go, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can do this, but how do you stay
Well,
you?
yeah. So I started the business. I'll probably go back 2 steps. I started the business because I was supporting families. Once we got to situations particularly early in our family life where, and I'm quite open about this, we considered relinquishment of care of one of our children, and, I speak openly because I've had permission to talk about it from my child, who's now an adult. Can I say also, we're quite open about the challenges we've been through as a family. But I think the reason then I got into what I'm doing is I started supporting other families to access support, particularly through education. When you've got a child who's been expelled from multiple schools, and, at one stage I had 4 kids in 4 different schools, it's a whole layer of fatigue that a carer has that people don't understand unless you're living in that world where you've got all of that extra work that just, again, is assumed that women will do. And I think, part of this is also talking about how women are just assumed to pick up the slack. And, for me, that's part of what the challenge has been over the years as well, being someone who wants to be taken seriously, particularly in male-dominated industries, insurance, construction, some of those other things. So I think I started this business because I wanted flexibility for myself. I knew I could help people, and we started very small. And within pretty much the 5 years since the NDIS has rolled out, it's gone from me to 34 people. And we employ people mostly, who come from backgrounds of, Indigenous backgrounds, people with disability, carers, families, single parents, people who, have all sorts of diverse backgrounds and experiences, because that makes us better as a group. And how I do it is lots of trashy reality television. That's my secret love. It always will be. And I need that. My brain is on 24/7. I'm always trying to think about ways I can do something better, or reflecting on what's happened, which I think is part of how you do things well, is by being very reflective. But for me, switching off is about doing things that don't use my brain, because my brain actually, I do have days where I just can't do it. And I try to honour that and actually disconnect and make sure that I give myself that space, because I think, I try and look at it as if someone else was saying to me, I'm doing all these things and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I would say, just stop. All you need to do is stop. I need to say that to myself as well. So I'm trying harder as I get older to have more balance.
Yeah, I think as I've loved, it's great to hear that. I'm glad you're really more now cognizant of that self-care and self-compassion. Someone actually said to me this week, she said, how do I do this self-care? Like she has a child with a disability, and I said, and I get it. Like, it's not like you can just go, oh, guess what? I'm off to a spa day today. We talked about self-care is also about that self-kindness, self-compassion, like knowing that you're doing the best you can. You're only human. So yeah, I think it is about what are those things that can help you switch off. Any recommendations on any trashy television that you're kind of watching at the moment that listeners can
look, any terrible real estate show where they've got the multi-billion-dollar, houses. I love all of those. I love anything around cooking. So, I'm crazy about MasterChef or any of those sorts of things. And honestly, I'll just find them, I'll stumble upon something. The one I can't do is Real Housewives, and I don't know why, but, when people start to get really nasty with each other, I do struggle with that kind of reality show. That's not my favourite. At the same time, I can, probably just sometimes go, I can't believe these people speak to each other this way.
I agree.
Like, it's just unfiltered. And honestly, for me, it's also about, sometimes, I actually in a former life have a degree in design and textiles, and I love knitting and doing things, tactile and kind of working through that process. And that's something I still try and maintain as much as possible as well. So varied interests, and things that you make yourself do. I think it's really important. Sundays, we've always had a rule, no sport on Sundays in the family. It was just a rule. And Sundays is our day for rest, relaxation, catching up, doing whatever. And that still sticks with us today.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I can see that you're really creative. It's good to tap into. I started painting over Christmas, so I kind of went, I haven't painted since I was in high school, and then I've started painting, and now it's become I think anyone listening or watching, it's so good to think about what you can do, even if it is just an hour or whatever, like having something to kind of go, what is it that kind of like fuels my soul? Like, it's having those things that I got really attached to. I love the fact you're interested in the real estate and cooking shows. I do like the real estate ones. I hate to admit this, but I became addicted to Walking Dead. I just, I was like, how do I kind of got to a stage where I was like, I actually want to be on that show. It was one of the zombies. Like it was, my daughter was keeping going, Mom, like what? I said, I don't know what it is. Like I was getting so, I thought, oh, anyway.
That's too violent for me. I can't do it.
It was actually it's very violent, FYI. So I wouldn't recommend it.
Content warning. Yeah.
I can't watch this. But it is. It's yeah. It's interesting how you can get attached to like, and there's so many great shows like Bear and things like that. But yeah. Anyway.
Yes.
So leadership, and obviously your submission and you being like even reading your submission was just wonderful, and it was so great to see that. Thank goodness I don't choose the finalists. I definitely don't choose the winners. But everyone is winners, but because it's just everyone's so amazing. But when it comes to leadership, like what does leadership mean to you? Like this, and to us it's obviously not a role or title, it's an attitude or choice, but you're leading every day. Like leadership's kind of in your blood. Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think leadership, my view of leadership has changed over the years as well. I used to think leadership was you're not a manager. You're going to take someone on the journey with you, and I think all of those things are still true. As a leader, you don't have to be in a senior position in business. What's changed for me is probably recognizing the different forms of leadership now, the more nuanced forms, which, for me are more about, one of our values at work, which a lot of people have, is collaboration, but we really collaborate. So when we're putting something in, and some people are critical of that, they say you over collaborate. I don't think you can over collaborate, actually. When we're putting something in, and sometimes it's a small change, sometimes it's a big change, but actually asking people's opinions, but then valuing and recognizing the different views or different ways in which a decision can help somebody's life. And a hybrid working policy is a really good example, just off the top of my head. So people can say, we're going to do a hybrid workplace policy. Here's a survey, fill it in, come back and tell us, and say, that's it, we've collaborated, we've done our job. That's the easy way. I think leadership is about actually saying, what are we trying to achieve? Where do we want to get to? And thinking about all the different people, because we used to in leadership talk about it's not the person, it's the position. I think now actually we have to recognise it's also the person that's in the position. And if you've got the right person in the right job, that's invaluable as a cohesive group. So for me, leadership is about also thinking about the people that are working in those positions and how they interact with their workday and what matters to them, and then coming up with something that is actually led by the team rather than led by you. And I think that's when you get the best outcomes for a workplace, is when you actually consider and demonstrate that you're considering a whole range of views. Does that make sense?
I love that. I think it's understanding them as individuals and what they're motivated by, what their strengths are, what are their talent, like what, and doing what you can to kind of get them to be working in or operating in a space that is where they feel like they're in the flow. And does that make sense? Versus, yeah,
exactly, 100%. Yeah. And then what happens is, we have lots of people, I started just me, and then we put a whole heap of people on in that first year. Most of those people are still with us as a group. So they've gone through enormous change. We've gone from being a little tiny itty bitty business where people are doing one thing or a whole part of the business, and now they're doing one thing or two things, and specialising. And that takes a lot of leadership in those people to not only recognise where they are going to work best and how they're going to fit into a larger organisation, but also to really then take other people with them and be able to kind of demonstrate the value of the business as a whole. And I think that comes from that collaboration. If you bring it all back to that collaboration, I think that's super important. The other thing for me about leadership is recognising that I don't know everything. I'm not great at everything. I'm a vision person. I have a million ideas a day. If I acted on every business idea I had, I'd not only be exhausted, but I'd probably also be broke, right? So for me, it's about needing to rein that in and choosing to surround myself with people who are great at their jobs, but also can have really open conversations with me where I can accept criticism and feedback. And I don't always like it. Nobody does. Criticism and feedback's really hard. But I think being able to recognize that, I'm not the answer to everything, even though I own the business and pay the bills theoretically. Having been able to take that step back and allowing people to say, yeah, great idea, Tanya, but actually we don't have time to put that in, or that's not going to work because, or, I've got a different view, I think is super important as a leader. And that reflection, and we sort of talked about that earlier, that continual reflection. I go to bed every day going, and it's just a natural thing for me. For some people, it's not natural, but I always try and encourage anyone in the team to kind of think this way as well. What did I do today that was really successful? How can I improve even on that thing that was successful? Because I think wanting to always be better than yourself is all any of us can really achieve, and we talk to the kids about that. There's no one else to compare yourself to but you. So if you have done one thing better than you did yesterday, that's a win.
I love that. I love that philosophy. That self-reflection is, I think, so powerful. And I always ask myself, these, was I who I wanted to be today? Like, was I true to myself today? Did I stand for my values? Was I true to my values? That self-reflection. And also, that's the most powerful thing that comparing yourself just to you, right? And instilling those values and those philosophies into your children. And that's what being a mother or parent is actually, I think, the most important leadership role.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And look, I'll just say, because I really need to always manage expectations. It is not perfect. I am not perfect. I overthink things. I still feel sad when somebody leaves, even though, the business, when a staff member leaves or when a client leaves, that taking it personally is something I'm really trying to work on more and more in terms of how I manage those feelings. And I think as females, we have that inherent need to please people that, a lot of women do, that I think is also what makes us great at what we do, but it's also can be a challenge. And so I'm trying to manage some of those kind of more negative challenges to myself as well. But it's certainly not perfect. And, our life is nowhere near perfect. It's generally chaos, particularly at home. Tidy office, the rest of the house you wouldn't want to come into.
I really love that. So thank you for sharing that. That's really authentic. And and it's great to hear that, because I think as well, we only see what we see, right? And sometimes we have perceptions and I've had Leadership HQ for 17 years, as you know, like businesses like this. And some people say, oh my gosh, like I thought you'd be on a yacht or something. And and I'll go, what? I said, because, people I think sometimes in business that it's really tough. There's been days that I've gone, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay the rent this month. And definitely I think I hear what you're saying around the people pleasing space. Like it's, I talk about courage and kindness, and, even though I have those two, they're two of my values as well, I still get really hurt when people are nasty to me or send me an email or sometimes I go, oh my gosh, but I always go to the 2 C's, curiosity and compassion. I'm curious around what's going on for them, and obviously showing compassion. Just a few comments that have come up from some of the people that are watching and listening today. Taddy has gone on with you, Tanya. I can't stand shows where people are just being nasty. But I do love some. But I still do love some tragic reality shows, laugh out loud. So I do just It's yeah, thank you. I agree. No one likes that. No one likes that at all. But just listening to and even when I worked with you a number of years ago, was so impressed with you and your leadership and your values. I could tell that that you're so passionate about what you do in the industry, but also you just espouse your values in spades. And I think that's a real testament to you and who you are as a leader. So that's why I love
thanks.
you.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I don't understand why other people create barriers for people with disability, Indigenous people, people from non-English speaking backgrounds. It's inherently not in me to see those differences. It's become more apparent to me as I get older that thinking is a thinking that is built into so many workplaces because the culture's so old, because the way it is, and I think one of the things for me around leadership is I just think people are great, genuinely great people who want to have a fulfilling work life as much as they do home life. And I think COVID really showed that, we can think about things in a different way. I think flexibility, particularly for people with disability through COVID, was something that was really positive, that we demonstrated that if you have a disability, you can actually do your work from home. You don't need to be in an office. And for me, it's just part of me, but it's not part of everybody. And I think for me, that's probably one of my responsibilities in the world, is to actually make sure that the things that I'm really good at, one of which is communication. I'm grateful I have the ability to communicate, and I understand and can advocate for my family and my children, but not everybody can. And I think it's really important then to be a leader where you're able to take that platform and show other people what good looks like, even if you're not always good all the time, if that makes sense.
That does absolutely make sense. So why do you think that is? Why do you think we still have a inclusive challenge? I just see that we still have this. We don't.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I went to a great lunch yesterday in Ballina, which was the Northern Rivers Autism Association, the inaugural launch of that association. Matt Rogers, the footballer, was there, who spoke because he has a fantastic charity called ASD for Kids. And inclusion was part of what we were talking about, the challenge of people who getting into work, people with disability. We're still, after 10 years of the NDIS, where employment was a main goal, we're still sitting here with barriers to employment. And look, our workplace isn't perfect either. We still have barriers as well, and one of them is time. And I think that's something we don't acknowledge enough as leaders in business, that actually part of providing an opportunity for someone with a disability or a non-English speaking background, for example, is the value of time, and being able to provide the time that it might take to support that person into work. And it's really easy to say, I'm too busy, we're under the pump. I mean, we've had a skill shortage the last few years that's been unbelievable and incredibly tough for business. But I think we need to take a step back and say, okay, I need to give the time to actually support this person into this role, because what I know is that on the other end, we are then showing that it's possible. And it's so empowering to be in a job that you enjoy, where you're valued. For me as a carer, the thing that kept me going most of my young mothering life was having a job, because I could walk into work and people would say, great job, Tanya, you're doing a really good job, which I never got at home, ever. And I think, it's super important to have that affirmation and positive outcome, particularly if you come from a background where there's a lot of negative kind of challenges. So that's one of the things I'm really thinking about at the moment, is how we can then perhaps do some transition, from adulthood into work for people where we're providing the time to actually give that opportunity rather than just, here's a job. Yes, we put in adjustments, but the adjustments might not be enough,
Do you think there's enough being done around, I mean, and this is where I'm thinking, I mean, how could we change, like how we could help or how we change this, right? Because I see this well, like when I talk to people around, like, again, being more inclusive, but also the opportunities for people with a disability around getting the skills, like getting the training or getting those skills. Do you think there's enough being done to prepare?
No.
Okay.
And I think it's really interesting. In Australia, we have lots of employment support and funding support and supporting this and supporting that, intervention and all the rest of it. But we're still having the same challenges where people with disability are underemployed in our country and often have incredible skills, not only work skills, but cultural skills. And I think that's something that's often missed as well. The benefit of having somebody who's positive in your workplace actually makes everybody more positive. It's just the way it is. If you feel passion and you see it, then you're going to be more positive yourself. So what we need to do is actually, I almost think, throw everything out and start again. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things is making sure that people who are transitioning, particularly to adulthood, are given the time and the space to learn how to work, because it's an enormous change going from school, or for a lot of kids, for example, my kids who were put into online learning because mainstream or other school settings weren't appropriate, or they were expelled from school, right? So they've been primarily disengaged from community, other than support workers. And then we're saying you've got to go and get a job because now you're 18, the magic number, which for most people is challenging enough. But, then you're adding this layer of having a disability. And, suddenly we're expecting people to have so many hours, and that's how employment services get paid, by placing into hours. I actually think we need to go backwards a couple of steps and support businesses to actually just build foundational skills. Those foundational skills, turning up to work, 1 day a week. Let's just do that for a couple of weeks and see how you feel about that. Too much? Okay, let's do it, every second week and just start with that. Because everything is overwhelming, particularly to a young person anyway. But when you add that anxiety and disability and negative, and then you're asking people to come into a community that's new, it can be incredibly overwhelming. And so for me, I'm really starting to think about how our business can build that next stage of incubation for people who are moving into that workplace.
Is anyone doing anything around? Is anyone offering anything around that? I mean, that's just such a great opportunity for it. I was down in Canberra speaking with NAWIC, which is the National Association of Women in Construction, and I was talking to a woman there that she's a head of a peak body around apprenticeships, particularly for women. And she was saying to me that women are leaving in droves, like they're leaving apprentices because the businesses aren't able to, because they're going into like mining and engineering and building as a woman, and they're not having that inclusiveness. They feel like the environment they're going in isn't prepared for, which just blows your mind, right? Like it's like we're at this step, but it's the same, I think, with like, hang on a second, we're not used to someone that is from a different country or has a disability or a different, because we're used to like how it's, like that we need to be educating, like that whole, how do we have more of that, I don't know, more of it, like, like we talk about emotional and having cultural, there's even a term called cultural intelligence. How do we gain those skills and more kind of awareness of how do we adjust our workplaces and our cultures and environment to, does that make sense? Understand?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the words you use often is brave. And I think it's about being brave to say, I'm going to give it a go. I mean, for me, it's about I want more for other people to succeed than I want for myself to succeed. You know, that's, I think, one of my responsibilities now. I've had success, you know, in terms of career and some of the other opportunities I've been given. I actually have a responsibility to share that. And I think that the biggest thing for me is then going, okay, if we're going to do this as a business, what have we got to lose? We've actually got very little to lose. Yes, we're in a business where we're on very fixed income. We get $100 per person per month, regardless of how many times they ring up, send us an email, ask us to pay invoices, need help with building relationships with their supports. You know, that's all we get. So we're on a very tight margin. But I feel like we have a responsibility. You know, we're in a business that serves people with disability. We have employed people and carers, you know, people with disability and carers. That's part of what we do. But it's not enough. I actually think now I need to be brave enough to say, okay, here's a gap. Here's something that's not happening. It's actually, I can't just sit here and say I'm not happy that it's not happening. I actually need to do something about it. So that's the next step for me in terms of the business, is actually doing this, you know. Yeah.
Let me know if we can help. Like,
Thanks.
I'm so excited that's actually, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you around that, because that could change our world, right? Like, I think that it's I think what your next, like, where you're wanting to go with this is going to be, this could be world changing. You know, I mean, obviously we want to stay Australia, but you know,
let's just tone it back a little bit, keep it in the Northern Rivers to start.
You know,
but I think, you know,
sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if the best work that you do comes from personal experience, you know that, I know that. And I think, you know, when I think about what I want for my people, the people in my family, I want them to have fulfilled lives. And part of that is work. And so really for me, it's about thinking about what do they need? And it's too hard for them to get that somewhere else. That's part of the challenges of being a carer and advocate, is that the work all falls on you to go out and then find the opportunities for your people that are going to work for them. So you've got to work with business owner, you've got to work with your therapist, your all of your intervention that you have, your support workers, bring all of that team together so that your person can successfully integrate into adult society, which is very different to school society. And I think, you know, that's where, for me, if I'm going to design programs or think about next steps, I'm doing it with them in mind. You know, what I've learned and how I can improve their lives, you know, which is then that flow-on effect.
Wow, that sounds incredible. Well, if there's anything we can do to help, or even anyone listening or watching,
yes, please,
reach out. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great,
I think it's, Sorry. I think it's about making that time, you know, that I think that's, you know, that commitment to time is the thing that's missing from employment services, because everybody's on a set funding amount, you know, and it's all measured in time. So you only get 10 hours or 20 hours or whatever it is. That's what's missing, is that kind of more open ability to work with someone in their time, not in your time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. In their time. And the other, I know it's a bit of I have a lot of, like, for me, I'm a big advocate for courage and community. You know, we need to be collectively a lot more courage, like showing, like, being fierce and being brave around. If there's things that we think that we need to change, we need to have the courage to do that. But we also need to know that it does take a community as well. So that's why connecting with others and helping others. I mean, and that's probably one of the reasons why as well I started the Leadership Awards, because I wanted to have the courage to showcase greater role models for our youth and for our generations of today and tomorrow, because we see so much negativity on social media. Like, this CEO is doing this wrong, or this politician's doing this wrong. I'm like, well, hang on. our youth, our future generations are not seeing a lot of positive role models. So that's why I created the Outstanding Leadership Awards, because I wanted that platform to showcase great examples of great humans like yourself. But also it takes community. I can't do that. We can't, if we've got something we want to do to make change, it does take us helping each other. So if I can help you, or if anyone listening or watching can help Tanya, please reach out to her. And I just wanted to say, I know I've taken up way too much of your time today. We've been talking for such a long time. I know I could talk for ages more. But I just wanted to say a massive thank you for your amazing courage and leadership.
Oh,
and
thank you, Sonia. That's very nice.
Oh, anytime. Is there anything you'd love to say before we kind of close off today?
I'd just say thank you, because it was a really good opportunity for me to probably reflect a little bit on where I've been and where I've gotten to, but also for anyone out there who might be struggling, in terms of their caring responsibilities, or even just in terms of leadership. I'm always happy to support, communicate, work with, whatever. I think it's really important that we give back.
It is so important that we give back, and kindness is, I think, kindness is everything. And you are definitely
Absolutely.
one of the kindest people I know. So I just thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Sonia. Really appreciate it.
And I will see you in a few weeks.
You will. Yes. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
yep,
it is.
It'll be great.
Magical event. It's the most magical experience. So I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Podcast and live today. Thank you.
Have a lovely day. Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast Leadership with Sonia. Find out more about Sonia, her work, and more podcasts at soniamcdonald.com.au and reach out to her and her fabulous team to learn more.